Hey guys, today I'm bringing you a video that is quite long. I honestly have no idea if I'm gonna be talking for the whole of it, but I'm definitely gonna show you all of it. Basically, what you're gonna be seeing is my acing all the tier 1 tanks, and I'm not talking about the new ones, I'm talking about the old ones, the proper ones, the ones that we should still have in my opinion. Over the last couple of months, I've not exactly made it a secret that I'm not a fan of what they were planning to do to the low tiers. And I just don't think that it will actually work for the general player base, because this update, I don't think it will help new players. They're trying to keep the players in the game, because apparently in the first like 10-20 games they lose about 20% of the new players, and that's generally not a good thing. I get that, but this is not the way to fix that. Basically what they've done with this update is remove the diversity of the low tiers. They've made it so that the low tiers are completely unbalanced, because everything that had an autogun is basically just not as effective as it was before. The derp guns are gone, which takes out a lot of fun for a lot of people in the low tiers. And yes, I get that the whole goal is to make people not seal club and to make people actually just go to the high tiers when they can and stay there. But the thing is that there's perks to every tier, and for me, tier 1 is one of those tiers. It's my favorite tier for a reason, and it's not to do with the fact that it's seal clubbing. That's a part of it. It's nice and relaxing gameplay. People don't talk as much here, so basically what you meet is a lot less toxic than in the high tiers, which is another pro in my opinion. But most of all, it's the only tier where you can have 14 people doing 14 different things, going 14 different directions, and you don't know how it's gonna go. Anything goes basically, and that's something that I really like about tier 1. It's a great ground to just test and to see new tactics. Well, not necessarily tactics, but like things like angling and side scraping and all the other things. Yes, technically you can do that in tier 2 as well, but in tier 2 people are already expecting quite a bit more of you than they would in tier 1. But tier 1 really isn't the only tier that has been completely destroyed by this update. It's all the low tiers up to and including tier 5. Tier 6 kind of, but not as much. But the problem is that because tier 5 has also been hit quite hard, it's pretty much impossible for tier 5 to carry hard against tier 6, and for some tier 6s against tier 7. It's basically all the changes that have been. It's just, I don't think this will work. I don't think this is a good idea. And like with the spare parts, it's probably gonna take Wargaming a very long time to actually find out about that, and by that time they could have already completely ruined the game. But that's not even the main reason that I'm against this update. Aside from the complete imbalance that we currently have a tier 1 that is pretty much impenetrable by a lot of tier 2s unless they manage to flank it or get behind it. They also just nerf prems, and that's a big problem, because yes, I get balance and all of that, but most premium tanks are sold with the more or less the promise that because it's a prem tank it will not get nerfed. And what they're doing now is technically they are not nerfing prem tanks. No, they're changing them into collectibles so that they can be nerfed. Basically, it's making use of a loophole that's just not healthy in my opinion, and it doesn't make Wargaming any more trustworthy than they already proved themselves not to be. And the only concession they made on this is the Kenny. Kenny has always been completely OP, and it's now even more OP compared to the rest of it, because it's not been touched. And I'm happy that it's not been touched, but I don't think it's fair that Kenny hasn't been touched when so many prems have been touched. And I'm not saying that Kenny should have been touched, I'm saying that people generally shouldn't have touched the prems at all. And up to a level I really do get Wargaming, I make no secret of that. They have to balance at some point. They have to basically manage a way to keep the new players into the game. But SCCs, and I'm talking about plural here because it's not just been me, it's been Martin Dork, it's been Gentlefun, it's been Meatsy, it's been Skate Scream of course, it's been Bushka, it's been pretty much all of us. We've talked to Wargaming about this so often since the first open test idea even came up about the low tier reworks, talked about how they should do it differently. It gave them so many options on how to do it differently. Like better tutorials, tips on tricks when you get the tank, just like these tiny little videos, or even just a description so that people know what it is exactly that you need to do in a tank, that you're not supposed to camp in a light tank, that you're not supposed to go completely frontline with a TD generally. You can of course in some, but I wouldn't advise that to new players when they first get it. But all of that, just massive amounts of tips that we've given them, that they should have been able to implement very easily. A lot of the tutorials we've been hinting at are tutorials that are actually available on the PC version of the game. We've seen them come past in the big screen in the conservation hall at Tankfest, because they were showing that there so that people had an inkling on what to do when they tried PC out there. So it is there, the whole footage that they need is there, so why aren't they using it? It's something that I find incredibly frustrating, because it shouldn't be this hard. And in my opinion, I don't think that this will actually work. I think this will actually make it harder for new players to get to know the game. Because when you start a game and you see lots of things that you can't have, that aren't supposed to be on sale ever again, it's not something that would make me enjoy the game basically, because, well, it's like dangling something in front of someone's face that they can't possibly have. And that is not a good thing. Because they're not planning to sell these things, not often at least from what I've understood. They're more gonna be like the gift tanks that we've gotten here and there throughout the year, that kind of stuff. Personally, I'm keeping them all. I don't want to get rid of any of the old tiers, so I've gotten them all. But I really hate that tier 1 has disappeared completely. Yes, technically speaking, we do have tier 1 tanks. They're new tier 1 tanks, but the iconic LOL tractor, the MS1, the Renault Otsu, and all the other little monsters that are at tier 1, they're all gone now, and I absolutely hate that. But aside from that, supposedly they are going to be having harder time grinding and they have less choice, but I think that also takes them out of the low tiers a lot faster, because you don't really have any choice but up. There's very few tanks you can have in the low tiers as a new player now, and overall that just makes you want to advance through the tiers faster, which means that we will have more potatoes in the high tiers, and that's not exactly gonna make a lot of people very happy. And supposedly this update is supposed to keep the seal clubbers from actually seal clubbing. That's never gonna happen. All the seal clubbers will have their favorite tanks, they will have them and they will play them, and they will seal club as much as before, regardless of the balance changes to the low tiers and everything. Because, well, it's now even more easy to club them seals, because the tanks that they now have are not as effective as they used to be, and that's gonna be very harsh on the new players, because all players, veterans, will know what to do with them. New players will generally not have a clue. Their tanks will be a lot less effective because they have less armor, less HP, less guns, less ammo, less, you name it, it has less basically. And that's gonna make it just harder. And I don't get what Wargaming is trying to do with this. I've heard a few people that are happy with the new update, and that has mostly to do with just the fact that you can sell all these collectible tanks for gold. But I believe that the only reason that Wargaming is actually doing that is to get the tanks out of the game faster, because of the whole gold promise, and because it's a good compensation of gold for those low tier tanks. A lot of people are selling them, which means that there will be less and less of them in the game itself. And in the end you will only have the true hardcore seal clubbers that will be here playing these low tier tanks. And you will have the new players there, and you will have the veterans there that are driving the tanks that everyone else can drive, which makes it pretty much impossible for new players to ace their tanks, in my opinion. But that aside, aces is not something that new players will really think about much, if at all, because they generally won't know what an ace is. That is, I didn't really learn what it was until I was a tier 5 myself, so yeah, that's saying something. But yeah, just overall, I think that this update will have the opposite effect of what Wargaming is trying to accomplish. And I think that it's going to be quite a long time before Wargaming actually realizes that. I'm really sad to see such iconic tanks as these little monsters go. And I aced all of them in one night, and it kind of goes to show how low the ace bar is for them, to be honest. But they're also, it's just a fun tier, and though it will still be a fun tier, right now everything in the low tiers is so unbalanced that it's pretty much unplayable unless you drive the tanks that you know are OP. And until they have actually been balanced, it will be pretty much impossible for new players to beat a Seal Clubber in any of their given tanks, because they will be driving the tanks that are already a lot harder for people to kill. But yeah, I'm getting it to the point where there's not much for me to talk about now. I dislike the update, obviously. I dislike the disappearing tier 1 tanks. I dislike the whole of it, to be honest, with the loss of the diversity, the loss of everything that I loved about the low tiers, basically. I still have my candy monster, I'm grateful for that, but it's not the same. We're about halfway through this actual video, so I'm not gonna talk the whole way through, because then I'm just gonna be repeating myself. I'm gonna put some music under here and I'm gonna let you watch the rest of it, and I hope you will mourn the low tiers as much as I will, and especially these lovely little iconic tier 1 tanks that are just now out of the game, and I don't think we'll ever see them again.